some might be the same. The House Oversight Committee on Homeland Security and Foreign Influence will come to order. Clerk, will you please take the roll?
Chair Bruck.
Present.
Representatives Meerman. Here. Shriver. Present. Menser.
Here.
Conlon.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
All righty. Representative Meerman moves to approve the minutes of May 21st. Hearing no objection, they are approved. All righty. Well, Representative Menser brought something to show today.
So
It is,
I got this from Selfridge. It is a picture of a B-24 bomber that they used, that was deployed in October of 1944 to bomb China. This plane is called the Cocky Bobby. So it's a signed and numbered edition. There's my show and tell.
Very nice.
Here.
you want me to sign it as well?
Yeah. Isn't it cool?
That is really cool.
No, but I'm thinking about it.
I believe it was Jake was telling me that the plant Willow Run was putting out one of those every 58 minutes, 54 minutes. Is that it, Jake? You're in the audience, so. Oh, that's a 56 minutes. They were putting out.
B-24?
Putting them out during World War II high gear production there. Definitely a part of the arsenal of democracy, and appreciate you bringing that today, Denise. Thank you. I think Merriman might keep it and get it framed, though. Representative Merriman likes it, certainly. No, that's really, really fascinating, really cool. I'm currently reading a couple books, and one of them has to do with World War II and pilots, and I'm enjoying it. Anyway, so today's kind of a special day. We were supposed to have a presentation today, and that got changed. We were supposed to be having Evanino was supposed to be here today from DC area presenting, but we are rescheduling. But I didn't want to cancel committee, and I wanted to go through it's been a number of months now, so I wanted to do a 4-month review, kind of go over some of the things that we've already talked about and had presentations on, and then, so I gave each one of you a packet. And so we're gonna go through, run through our 4-month review, and then we're gonna have some discussion on some of the things that we're looking at doing over the next couple months, as well as some of the legislation and some of the current events that are happening right now. And as you know, this last weekend, we saw some amazing drone activity in Russia. I mean, every day there is drone activity back and forth between Ukraine and Russia, and then we saw the incredible way drones were used to destroy a third of their Russia's strategic bombing fleet. Pretty amazing, I mean, in a good and bad way, but it also is a very, I think, pertinent thing for us to look at and discuss as well. Could that happen here? And I think we're at great liability currently in our country for something that could even be similar to that. But we'll talk about that shortly. But I just want to run through all the topics we discussed thus far, and I promise, Representative Conlon, I will not take over an hour in this meeting. So if I do, you be sure to let me know.
Okay, thank you very much. There's actually Representative Menser who wants to get to the Capitol lawn lunch.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It would be nice to have lunch once in a while. I usually keep you guys here late. So my apologies. But so our very first presentation we had was a presentation by retired General Doug Odie Slocum. And he talked about, essentially it was an overview of readiness, air guard. He did talk about Selfridge some, but You know, he went into a lot of details, more national defense overview, more centered on Air National Guard and what he had experienced. And so we appreciated that. That was kind of our kickoff to kind of get us in the mood for what is Homeland Security and what do we want to really do here in this committee. I think he was a great start-off point. And then we very quickly went into fentanyl, and we stayed there for 4 committees. We had Michael Sheriff Bouchard presented. He was our first presenter, and he brought up a lot more than just fentanyl, but geared around fentanyl, the gangs, and then also talked about drones. Then we had Chuck Height from Berrien County, Sheriff Height. He came in and did something similar to what Michael Bouchard had done. Then we had Sheriff Troy Goodenough came in. He talked about fentanyl, but also the child trafficking, the Viper program that they have down in Monroe County and has been emulated around the state, protecting our communities against traffickers. And then we had Dr., I'm going to say it wrong, Baghdad Syrian, but I may have said it right. Okay. She was from the state, but also works at the VA, and then she presented on, if I remember correctly, fentanyl from a different perspective on the help side and the ability to recover and kind of the dynamics of what happens with fentanyl. We know it causes death, but she came from that medical side, and I was truly impressed by her, greatly impressed, and really thankful for what she talked about. And then we went into drones, or UAS, unmanned aerial devices, and we had Dakota Greenman speak. He did the flyover of the drone, got quite a bit of notice from people, and that is on the website, or on the House site, I should say, for review. Then we had Matt Rybar, who represented the Michigan Public Safety Drone Association. And then we had Scott Schaffman, who was from the AUVSI, and kind of talking about, we had a lot of talk about drones, and we're going to have more, and we were planning on having some today as well. But I wanted to do that quick overview, and I'll open it up for any comments on any of our presenters if you would like at this point, or to discuss any of the topics that we hit in previous presentations. Sorry, I should have told you before I started talking, but yes.
Thank you, Chair. I think at some point we have to have a much more serious conversation about our military readiness. As you and I learned Monday, we're not ready with tanks. We're not ready with unmanned tanks. And from our presentation from Odie Slocum, we are not prepared with fighter jets. So I think that that's a conversation that we really need to put some.
Well, we're going to do that in potential presenters at the end.
Okay.
Well, just this discussion, just anything on the previous presentations, I guess. But I guess you did bring in Odie to it, so I guess I stand corrected.
Okay.
You're right.
Drugs are bad. There you go.
Drugs are very bad. Drugs are very bad. But hopefully, in your packet, we did put, I put in a letter, we did a letter of recommendation, so that's that second sheet in your packet, and we really hit the fentanyl items. And if you read through that, this was what we submitted to the House leadership in order to try to get some legislation regarding pill presses and also supporting various penalties for fentanyl dealers and the like, and then addressed xylazine. So this was just one of the things that we produced as a letter of recommendation. I wanted to include that with your packet. Representative Meerman?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. That first hearing that we had, it was pretty eye-opening for me to see kind of where we stand in the perspective of the world, because it does matter about, other things that we're talking about here. And then I would also, I guess, point out the the drone, I had read things concerning them from DOD and, other articles, but to kind of see and hear firsthand what was going on with them, hardware, software, capabilities, pretty eye-opening for me in multiple different levels. Thank you.
Thank you for that feedback. Representative Stryker.
Piggybacking off of the presentation by Sheriff Goodnow on the Human Trafficking Task Force, I would just like to reiterate the connection between human trafficking and the porn industry. It's a direct feeder system, and I'm working on legislation to hold the producers and the disseminators of this product that is directly linked to human trafficking. And I think that's something, based on what we heard from him, that would be very good in order to kind of cut it off at the root in terms of the feeder system and take more of a holistic approach. There's a lot of Michigan residents who are looped into the human trafficking or sex trafficking industry merely by engaging in this pornographic material that's directly related to human trafficking victims. So that's big for me.
Yeah, I would say there's definitely a link for sure. And a lot of those folks are, I don't know for certain, but obviously Good Enough was, there is a link between trafficking and that industry as well. Madam Connellan.
Thank you, Chair Brook. Yes, I found the human trafficking, I found all of the presentations really eye-opening, so thank you for having such a great learning environment for us on this committee. Yes, I feel like when it comes to drones, and as we saw with Ukraine and what happened in Russia, pretty impressive, but also makes you concerned about how we would face something like that. And everything we heard from the many different presentations we had on drones, especially from, I think it was one of the engineers and the business of building drones and how great that would be in our state, I think, if that's a defense contract or whatever that is. But on top of it, with the human trafficking, I think I was quite shocked to learn that, the Super Bowl is one of the biggest places where this happens, but also even our seasonal workers. It never occurred to me, and I think Rep. Meerman brought it up, like, when people come to work at your farm, you're assuming that that's not happening, and I think they have ways they, kind of don't tell the truth, and you have people working who are actually being trafficked, and you think they are not, they have the visa they need, and they tell you that. So it was very eye-opening.
Thank you for those comments. I do appreciate it. And part of the purpose today, obviously, we wanted a presenter, but I didn't want to cancel because I think this is a good time for us to kind of regroup and to get some of your feedback as committee members. And I know at the very beginning, I laid out a plan, like, I want this to be the least partisan committee in, I'll say DC, Lansing, because we have a singular focus, which is Homeland Security and foreign influence or interference and making our state a safer place. So the feedback you folks give to me help me move us forward, so I appreciate it. And I've certainly got some leads we're working from Representative Menser on presenters, and we're going to talk about that here in a little bit. But on what we've already done, knowing that we've had good presentations, that helps me move forward as well with the next set of presentations, and knowing that we're hitting some good points, I think, on every presenter as well. We've had 3 sheriffs, and all 3 sheriffs came from very different areas, but talked about different topics, but everything really is interrelated, but they had much different things to present. So I appreciated them, and I appreciate your comments as well. Another thing I wanted to hit, do we have any more discussion on that particular topic? So I also included in your packet a proposal, the FAIR for Michigan, the Foreign Adversary Influence Reduction. And most of you participate a little bit in our drone safety symposium that we had. It wasn't part of the committee, but obviously I'm the chair and I was running that symposium, but we have the synopsis of that is also in your packet as well. But that has to deal with this foreign adversary influence reduction, and a lot of it has to do with drones. As you can see, it's a page front and back, so a two-pager that has some proposed blue bags that we already have, but also has some that are in work. So we've been working with the drafter, and part of the symposium was taking information we got from stakeholders and then giving that to the drafter. So it is actually taking a very long time to get those back. I'm told possibly 2 weeks. We might have some bills, but I would like to, make sure I get those for review from you folks as well on the committee, because I think it's important we do this in a bipartisan, but also, as Michiganders to make our state a safer place. And this package deals a lot with drones, and it deals with the procurement, which we've had a number of presenters talk about the procurement, the manufacturing, and/or the use. I think Mr. Rybar talked about, they use a lot of DJI drones for safety in that realm. And then we had Dakota, speak about a lot of the dangers of the back doors and what a drone can actually do. And I think there's a lot that we need to look at there. But I wanted to, in light of this, I wanted to pass these out. I don't think I have enough. I have enough for everyone. So this is a news article that just came out, and obviously we talked about Russia a little bit, but in our testimony, when we had the drone testimonies, I think everyone was asked questions or spoke on the issue of drone swarms. And what happened in Russia over the weekend was a very well-planned drone swarm, a very close relocated drone swarm. It didn't fly hundreds and hundreds of miles. It was transported via a trailer truck, by a truck as a trailer or mobile home or however they had it disguised, and it was very close to the location. And this article, take it as it is. I don't support everything that's in it, but it really does kind of start us thinking on what if something like that happened here? What do we have to protect ourselves? And honestly, speaking of the most drones ever used in a conflict has been Ukraine and Russia. Every day there's drones flying back and forth, and every day there's drones getting shot down by either side. And they've been pretty successful on both sides at shooting down these drones. Sometimes they get through to critical infrastructure, and sometimes they're hitting tanks and things on the Russian side. They're being used well, but they're shooting a lot down. You hear it every day. This particular instance, in a war that drones are a primary weapon system, Russia failed to react, at all. And those drones performed exactly what they were meant to do in that instance, which was destroy a whole bunch of planes, millions upon millions upon millions, hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars worth of equipment with $430 drones placed in the right place. And that's in a war where they're looking for drones. That's the main adversary, really, on both sides. And they were caught sleeping in many respects. So this article kind of takes that scenario and brings it to more of an American viewpoint, and if this could happen here. Which brings me back to the FAIR package that we're doing. I've been doing a lot of work, just so the committee members know, speaking to various Congress people. Had a meeting, two meetings with Congressman Barrett, had a meeting with Congressman Bergman's people. We have reached out to both senators. I actually, on the island, I made some real good contacts with Senator Peters' folks as well as Slotkin's folks. So we're hopeful that we can get some meetings and put some pressure on our federal elected officials to get pressure on the FAA to allow us as a state to protect ourselves. But I'll open up the floor again at this time for any comments or suggestions on that. Yes, ma'am.
No, I was just going to add that I think the reporting has shown now that the Russian defense for those drones was to put tires on top of the planes, which did not obviously work, but that was their way of protecting those planes. So they are shots of just rubber tires on top of all the planes. Just, yeah.
Oh, Representative Meerman.
Thank you, Chair. Just, I guess, I think maybe this is the spot to put it, but new Senator Alyssa Slotkin, her first bill was banning electric vehicles that had significant hardware from China. And it's my understanding the point is with the right software and hardware on those electric vehicles, they could be used as a bomb. And I don't know if I added that, banning them from military bases. So,
The ones that have the components in them.
yeah. It's the first bill that the new senator put out, that's my understanding.
I gotta look it up. No, it's a bipartisan issue, as I said at the beginning. Security of our nation, security of our state is very bipartisan, and you see on both sides of the aisle. There was, I believe, an executive order was supposed to be signed today, which part of the fair package was the procurement portion, and having some grace period, working with the stakeholders to give a certain period of time where Chinese-made drones or drones that are on the 1260H list could be phased out. And I don't know all the details of the executive order that was done today, but it's essentially banning a lot of those drone manufacturers from selling. I don't even know all the details of it as far as if it's just public dollars or was it private dollars being marketed in the U.S. I'm having Casey trying to look that up. I know that's like new news. So there's a lot of federal emphasis on this issue as well. So I think as a state, our committee's pretty cutting edge, and I like that, and hopefully you like that too. I'm hopeful that we can get the right observation from the right eyes that are really seeing what we're trying to do and then get assistance. But that may help us as a state. Again, I won't say take that decision out of our hands, but help us with those decisions that come kind of hard. Because in our whole package of bills or package of ideas, it was procurement, restrictions, and enforcement. And there's a lot more agreements on the restrictions and the enforcement in our state. Now we've got to deal with the FAA, but on the procurement side, that's where it was a little dicey with some of our stakeholders on that would have, detriment to making a certain drone not purchasable by the state or through tax dollars. But
Well, I think
Yes,
it's going to
ma'am.
be really important that we follow through on Governor Whitmer's promise to get a chip factory here. Because if we don't make chips here, we're still buying Japanese or Chinese chips. We have to make chips here. And that needs to be a bipartisan effort to make sure that that gets passed. We need to do everything we possibly can to make sure that the drones that we're buying and using are made with American parts and American chips. So anything that this committee can do to make that goal of Whitmer's come true, we must do it.
yeah, and I'd say that's a goal of the whole state for sure, and getting drone manufacturing nationalized here, or I should say established here in Michigan. And we heard from some of, I think it was the third presenter, if I remember correctly, the Stoffman, was speaking about the logistics of getting a system spun up to create or manufacture drones here in Michigan and/or the states. And it's utterly, utterly important. You know, it's a national security issue at that point. Because had we depended on another country for B-24s in World War II, we might not be sitting where we are now. Okay. Does it have details on it? Yeah, just on the executive order, because I had mentioned it, and this is the proposed, you're saying? Washington Post. It's executive order that could ban Chinese companies like DJI and Autel from selling their drones in the U.S. Orders could be signed as soon as this week. Intel community would be directed to accelerate existing reviews, which we heard in one of our presentations. I think Matt Rybar was talking about the reviews. In addition to orders, would reportedly require the federal government to invest in the U.S. Domestic drone industry, updating federal regulations where commercial drones can legally fly. So a lot of these issues, that's really addressing a lot of the issues we've talked about, which is really cool from our vantage point. But it sounds like there's also going to be an emphasis in this executive order to create or incentivize national drone manufacturers here in the U.S., which really is something we've talked about, whether it's chip manufacturing or the hardware or the plasticware and the software, all those components that we talked about.
Well, and the one thing you have here under the fair, the fair package that I don't think we've spent enough time talking about is the critical infrastructure. You know, they can send one big-ass drone over here and take out a power plant, or they can take out, a water treatment plant, and it'll devastate hundreds of millions of Americans.
Probably just be a half-ass drone, too.
Well,
Not a big one. It doesn't have to be a big one.
It could be a $423 drone.
Yep.
But I think that that's an avenue that we really need to pay some attention to, protection, and make sure that we have laws that prohibit and prevent and react to any kind of drone, foreign or domestic, over these critical infrastructure plants.
Yeah, I think I was talking to someone, and it doesn't matter if it's an American drone or a Chinese drone or a Russian drone. It doesn't matter where it's from. If it's flying over critical infrastructure and it's weaponized, it's a problem. And I will do my hardest. You know that. But we will be, hopefully, in the next couple of weeks having that out. And I do have, Representative Conlon, sorry.
Oh, thank you, Chair. No, I'm just looking at these possible bills around personal property zones and real estate for drones. I was at a rooftop restaurant. We were celebrating my daughter's graduation 3 weeks ago, out of state. But all of a sudden, this drone came and was just buzzing around the whole rooftop restaurant, just bothering all the diners. Nobody knew what it was doing there. I thought, it's come after me. No.
Paparazzi.
And it was just so disturbing and unsettling, and nobody could get it to go away. And I don't know. I mean, we asked the restaurant. It didn't appear to be something they were doing to get aerial shots, for marketing reasons. So I think that's very interesting. On the other hand, I wouldn't have been happy to see a lot of people pull out a gun and take that drone down. So you need to probably, when you, I don't know what perceived to be a threat is, obviously,
The drafters are going to come back with a little change on that, I'm sure. If you've seen the Texas law, so Texas passed a law where they actually authorize people to shoot drones down, and it mentions the type of weapon system.
Okay. Because there was also
not going there.
There was that very strange thing that I think happened last autumn in New Jersey or wherever, where these huge drones, and they never really figured out what that was unless it was federal and they weren't revealing what they were up to. But that just was very upsetting for all those parts of the state that were sort of in the middle of the night seeing all these, So I do think some kind of legislation, and I know, do you worry about it with air traffic control? Or they don't go that high, I guess we were told about that, but.
Well, with
One
Sheriff
of our-
Bouchard, they said they were flying at 3,000
Yeah,
feet.
one of
with
them
his
said that it
helicopters.
is kind of getting in the flight path for, a smaller aviation.
I think there are rules and regulations for recreational drones and how high they can fly, but I think that that's violated on a regular basis.
Yeah, there's very little enforcement. There's not really an enforcement arm in the FAA with the violations is really what appears to be the case. I did speak on the island to 2 individuals from airports, one from Lansing and Nicole. I'm trying to think of her name now. I believe it was Nicole, but she's the director of the Lansing Airport Authority, and we had some really good discussion on the island and trying to get her involved here because the legislation will specifically mention airports, although the FAA technically, there's already restrictions around airports and the air flight paths, but those are being violated according to her. Those things are happening all the time, and it puts people's lives at danger. And those aren't necessarily nefarious drones. They're probably just knuckleheads flying where they're not supposed to. But then again, the airports have no capability or authority to engage with these drones and do anything with them either. So hopefully we can put some teeth into the legislation as well.
Well, that would be very welcome after we talk about what happened at TACOM.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I did get a BOE tour. Menser was up there as well, and Sterling. BEA, sorry. What did I say? BOE, didn't I? BAE.
It's the name of the business, BAE.
Systems or something. And they develop a lot of the fighting vehicles that, I've used the Bradleys, the M88 recovery vehicle. They did do the Strikers. There's a number of combat ground vehicles they do, but they are also developing counter UAS technology as well. And so I talked to a gentleman named Mike, and we're going to try to get them here because that's certainly something we want to look at. They're developing it for defense, for the military essentially, but there's possibilities, there as well for other uses, and it was pretty cool technology.
I would just say I also like this idea of the no drone zones. Obviously, that was pretty disturbing to hear how drones could go over the big house in Ann Arbor or, the stadium here in East Lansing at Michigan State and, really do some damage.
Yeah, and technically they're violating FAA, but there again, it's violation of the FAA is only as good as your knowledge or your awareness or your willingness to abide by laws. And if there's no invisible fences, which is why I think geofencing would be a good thing here in the state as well. Let's see, anything else here?
Isn't one of the other land systems that they were talking about was UAS tanks? Unmanned.
Oh, they're unmanned
yeah,
tanks, yes.
Unmanned tanks, yeah. Unmanned tanks with giant howitzers. It was way cool. I loved it.
Our defense, our DOD, all warfare is going in a different direction than it has in the previous, 8,000 years or whatever, since we've been fighting each other, since Cain and Abel killed each other. With the club, we've advanced quite a bit on how we can kill each other, and also the development of how to protect ourselves is also developed. And we're seeing it like at quantum speed right now. I really do believe. Yes, sir. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're going to get to that here shortly. So on the front page, if you flip over the 4-month review, we are going to be getting into cyber. We're in discussion right now with Battle Creek, doing some counter UAS and cyber presentations, as well as a couple individuals. I met an individual from Rock Financial who they have an arm, and their cyber arm, they're very interested in getting involved in this committee for the cyber purposes and anti-cyber attacks. Next week, we do have a presentation. Obviously, today's presentation from Evanita is rescheduled. But next week, we have a presentation on human traffic data from MSP, so we're kind of going to flip back just a little bit. But then after that, we do have a couple weeks off, and then we're going to be right back into drones and cybersecurity. So the potential presenters that we do have is, I spoke to both Michigan Tech and Ferris State, and they're very, very open to coming. There'll be more, I think Michigan Tech will have a drone aspect to it, but Ferris State, and both of them are going to be discussing cybersecurity and cyber attacks and things of that. Servers was a big one, talking to the Ferris State folks, because Representative Mearman has mentioned the server issues on our critical infrastructure and utility systems, and they have some real good insight into that, and backdoors and things on servers and digital hardware. And then also the airport authorities and DTE, we're looking at having them, and then BAE, not BOE. BAE coming and from the commercial side, talking about whether it be drones or cyber security. And then we're still optimistic. We're working on, I have a meeting, I'm going to annual training this year, except I won't be I won't be on orders, right, Mr. Sable? But I'm going up to meet with General Rogers, and we really want to get the Michigan National Guard involved. We've been trying to work out some dates, and different dates haven't worked, and then there were some cancellations and things on our side on the session days and things. So we're really looking forward to having the Michigan National Guard presenting, and that'll put it at a local level here in Michigan as well. And then we have chip manufacturers. I should specifically reach out to a chip manufacturer, and we really want to look at, Jake is working on some stuff regarding the procurement of and building up our manufacturing system here in Michigan, and working with some stakeholders to try to, gird up our ability here in Michigan to create a product that we've heard presenters say we don't have it, or it's not good enough. We've had other presenters say the American-made drones are even better, or at least equal in most aspects. But having that industry here in Michigan, which has a lot of DOD manufacturing, as we've seen, especially north of Detroit, in Detroit and north of Detroit, a lot of DOD manufacturing, and both of those colleges that I mentioned, Michigan Tech and Ferris State, and U of M, who I'm also in conversations with, have DOD research manufacturing going on in their facilities, utilizing our tax dollars and federal tax dollars for research for DOD purposes, and it'd be very good to have them on board. But Representative Shriver, you had a comment on presenters as well?
Yes. On the topic of Homeland Security and foreign influence, what if I told you there were 100,000 foreign drones in Michigan already? That would be very alarming. There are 100,000, you can call them undocumented foreign nationals, you can call them illegal aliens, tomato. But at the end of the day, there's a very effective program being implemented in Jackson County and the city of Taylor. And I'd like to have the Jackson County Sheriff and/or the Mayor of Taylor come in and report on the 287G program to assist with finding and really determining where these undocumented foreign nationals are, and collaborate with the federal officials to aid in deportation efforts. Because, like I said, on the issue of Homeland Security and foreign influence, we have that currently in our state. It's not a what if this drone attack happens. It's a this is already happening, and so I think that would be very valuable just to get their input on their work.
Okay.
So that's one, and then two, on the topic of foreign influence. Online, on social media, you have influencers. That's like a formal title for someone on social
job,
media. It's
yeah.
a job, yeah, an influencer. And a lot of these influencers are being paid by foreign governments to influence us in our state. They influence our perspectives, they influence our politics, and they are not required to disclose who they're being paid by. And I'm not sure what we can do on that front, but that's something that I wanted to bring to your attention. Just in the terms of foreign influence, well, if we're going to talk about foreign influence, we should talk about foreign influencers and how we can ensure that they're at minimum required to disclose who are they being paid by to send out a tweet. They get paid $500 for a tweet with information to influence Michigan residents. The least we could do is require them to disclose who is paying them to push this information.
Roger that. No, that's good comments, and I mean on the first, I will say in the last week there has been two individuals two individuals that were either here illegally or overstayed their visas that did very damaging things. I think the guy with the flamethrower, and then I'm trying to think the guy they just arrested here in Michigan, correct? With the biological, the undocumented fungi or whatever that they had at U of M, and doing research, and they were paid by, I guess it'll all come out in the wash, but paid for by, CCP to bring that stuff over here to research it more. There's definitely a lot of stuff we could delve into on that, I think. Thank you for those. Thank you for that. Representative Mincer.
I would just like to add that I really think it would be really nice to make a field trip to Selfridge, because Selfridge has a Homeland Security office, and it also has a Border Patrol office, and we are along the border there from Canada. So I think Director Sabo could help us set that up with General Brancato. It would be, I think, a really good trip for us to see this in person, and for General Brancato to give us some background and of what they're doing, how they're doing it, and what we can do to help.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Representative Conlon.
I would agree with that, Rep. Menser, especially because I'd like to see the place where you grew up. I did go out to Selfridge once I think it was organized when some of the Congress people we were in when we were trying to get the big jets. And it was fascinating to actually see Selfridge.
Yes, that would be very good. I know a guy, and he's watching us right now. That would be very good. And Casey reminded me that the Border Patrol had offered a tour of their border facility as well. And so that would need to work on that. That would definitely be something, and I'll work with Casey on the dynamics of it, how, I suppose it's okay for a committee, as long as we're not doing committee stuff, we can do a tour, I'm assuming. But I'll work through that with the right people to make sure everything's kosher on that, and send out the right invites and get those set up. As I said, a lot of the stuff we're going to be moving forward, probably most of the rest of the year is really going to be centered mostly around cyber and drone stuff. UAS, drones, cyber. Cyber is going to be a big dive, I know, once we get into it, and that one's probably way more complicated than even the drone stuff that we've dealt with. But it's something that we as a committee and a state really need to dive deep into. And the comments also, working with our border security, our border patrol, and working with the gems that we have in the state, like Selfridge, are very, very necessary as well. Do you have your hand up, Rep. Merriman?
Sorry,
Oh,
just being relaxed, I guess.
okay. No, we want you relaxed. This is the most relaxed committee, right? No?
Sometimes it's the committee that scares me the most.
Yeah, I've had so many good conversations, and I hope you don't live and breathe drones as much as I have been the last 2 months, but it seems every conversation with any individual seems to come to something regarding security, and really our vulnerabilities really have been highlighted in my mind. Because as we know, when you get a chance, read through this article. It is a very good article, but really in my mind, when I read through this article, my thought was Selfridge. And I'm thinking 16 new F-15EXs sitting, 21
Eagle 2s.
21 sitting on the tarmac, and this same thing, we really have no real protection in our state or around the nation for something nefarious as what happened in Russia. And I think that's what this article really brings out. It talks about the stealth fighters and things, but I mean, to lose one, you can't just replace it. As we went to that tour this weekend, it takes them how long to build one M88? I think he said a year or something, about a year. And they were putting out the new replacement for the M113, and they got a contract for, I'm probably going to say it wrong, but it was like 63. And the max that they can put out, to replace, just a ground vehicle takes a lot of energy. It takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of material, it takes a lot of money, but to replace a stealth fighter or another jet, I mean, we have 21 jets coming that haven't even been produced yet. And it's going to take years to get those 21 jets up here to Michigan. And to lose one, it's not just, you can't just go to Walmart and buy a new jet or buy a big piece of equipment. It takes years to rebuild and billions of dollars to rebuild. And so these are things that we really need to focus on. Menser, you had a comment?
Those jets are going to be so transformational to Southeast Michigan. When you consider the economic impact that Selfridge has right now, $850 million in Southeast Michigan, just the impact, and that's not counting the arsenal of democracy or the aerospace and defense manufacturers who add about $65 billion to that number. So these jets will make a difference in our safety. They will make a difference in our economic impact, and they will lead the rest of the United States in military preparedness.
Oh, I think
I'm all
so.
about these big-ass jets.
Especially when you add the KC-46s up there, it's a valuable, huge asset, and we as a state need to protect it. And our job, I think, as Homeland Security, as a committee, is to come up with ideas and legislation that allow us as a state to protect that asset. Because, I mean, it's nothing to wink at that we got the opportunity to get those that saves Selfridge, and it not only saves it, but it also propels it to a whole new level nationally. And our state should be very, very proud of that. I know they are. I know General Rogers is very proud, but it's not a thing that comes without responsibility as well. And we as legislators need to ensure that we are doing our best to allow you guys, to allow our National Guard and our Air Guard to do their best, which is protect us as well. And I know we're getting near the end of time, so I don't want to belabor this much more, but I do want to open up if there's any further comments. We'll try to keep you in line with everything that's going on and updating you with the presenters that will be presenting, and certainly I have a few do-outs here. Certainly setting up some field trips. I think would be great for us to be able to do and bring some esprit de corps to our little committee, but it's very, very, very important, as I think it might be one of the smaller committees here in Lansing, but I think it's one of the most important outside the appropriations. I mean, that stuff has to happen, but this is very real impact on our state, whether it's fentanyl and ways to assist our law enforcement and our recovery efforts for people that have been addicted to drugs such as that, but whether it's that or child trafficking or national defense, we play a huge role here in our state. So I want you guys to be proud that you're on this committee. I'm glad for each one of you being on here. I give you my thanks and appreciation for all the comments and interaction that you have on this committee. It is appreciated. And again, we'll drive through and keep moving and keep cutting the edge closer and closer till we get to a point where we feel that, you know, our time is well spent here. Because I drive 4 hours a day and I need purpose to be here. And this has really revived my purpose, and I know Mr. Sabo could relate to that a little bit, or General Rogers. When you retire out of the military, you have to find purpose and a mission. Your next mission, as my wife says, you never sit still, Will. I'm like, no, because if I sit still, I'm not moving. I need to be moving. I need to be doing something, and this committee certainly is worth the effort and the movement. So I appreciate each one of you. And seeing there's no absent members today, I did have on there, we have had 9 committee meetings. We've only had 1 absent member, so I find that very, very fulfilling. And that was just the first because of a miscommunication. So that was our first meeting. So I don't gig anybody on that, but you guys have done very, very well. I appreciate your attendance and your attention to the real issues. Oh, Representative Shriver, yes, sir.
Let the record show I was not notified for the first meeting. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
No, it was a communication error on my part. I take that upon me. So I've tried to make sure that everything is communicated a little better than that. But I'm proud of that. A lot of committees can't say that their members show up every week, but that means that you want to be here, or you're forced to be here. But either way, I'll take it as you want to be here. So I appreciate everything you guys do, and seeing there's no absent members today, and there's no further business before the Committee on Homeland Security and Foreign Influence, we stand adjourned.